DBQ stands for document-based questions. And there's basically 6 steps to it. And the overall goal is to get students to use primary documents to then write a persuasive essay. What have we been talking about kind of leading up to this DBQ? Yes?
The Salem witch trial.
Today, there is a witch in this room. Has anyone around you been displaying these types of characteristics? Don't point. Think about it. Just think about it in your head. Has anyone been displaying characteristics of a witch? My hook today was basically an activity to get kids to understand how hysteria works. And so what we did today is we had index cards taped underneath the desk, and there were 5 preset witches. And these witches had markers that they were supposed to do. So one of them was supposed to kind of chirp like a bird, one was supposed to sing softly, and the other one was supposed to look at their warts or freckles. Now everybody else's said just imitate the people around you. 60 seconds left. All you're doing is what it tells you to do on your card. So this is purposely designed to be kind of confusing, kind of accusatory, so you're getting people to kind of look around and see what's going on. And the end result is how something very small and insignificant as making a bird noise can extrapolate out to the whole class, making dog noises, howling, people twitching, and to show them that on a very micro scale, what happened in Salem, Massachusetts in 1600s on a macro scale. Right now, without talking or conversing with anybody else, I want you to write down the top 2 people who you suspect might be a witch.
Elvis and Adrian.
Elvis and Adrian? Adrian, who do you think it is?
Bailey and Cole.
Bailey and Cole. Sarah, who do you think it is?
I think it's Shelby and Destiny.
You think it's Shelby and Destiny? Richard, who do you think?
I want to say Ryan, obviously, and Jordan.
And Jordan.
Yeah.
We think it's going to be either Ryan, Jordan, or Spencer. So we think the witch is definitely a guy, correct? All right. On their cards, it says that they are the witches. Okay. What did yours say?
To sing softly.
Sing softly. What did yours say?
Begin to meow like a cat.
Begin to meow like a cat. What did yours say?
Twitch my neck and my arms.
Do you think when people are accused of doing something that people can sometimes be wrong?
Yes.
I saw you nodding your head. Ryan, why do you think?
Because sometimes people judge a book by its cover or something like that.
People judge for what?
A book by its cover.
Oh, they judge a book by its cover. Raise your hand. Do you know of an example of something that started small and then ended up way blown out of control? Yes.
America?
Okay, America started small, and some people would argue it got a lot of control. We'll see tomorrow during the election. What about something else?
Gangnam Style.
Okay, music videos, right? The little Gangnam Style music video, all of a sudden, overnight, okay, he becomes popular. Here's what I immediately thought of. What about rumors at school? Right? Somebody says one little thing at school, by the time school gets out, you think World War III is going to go on and everyone can't wait to go home and go on. But I think most of the kids understood, especially when you kind of bring it back to school about a rumor, how it can start small and go all the way out. And so there's lots of examples that they were kind of pulling from themselves to understand what was going on. We're doing this kindergarten style reading. While you're reading this, remember, I'm going to read slowly. I'm going to explain some of the tough words, and I would like you to please follow along with your finger. All right? So here we go. The second part of it is the background essay. I invite them up for what I call kindergarten style reading. It kind of brings them back to kindergarten. You sit down on the floor, and then what I do is I read it to them very slowly, very theatrically, and I think they just appreciate the difference of not sitting in a physical desk, but getting to actually sit down on the floor and kind of harken back to those olden days. And I want you to understand some of the words in there, and we're going to talk through it, and it sounds goofy and corny, but I found it works. If a suspected witch shouted hateful words at someone and later that person broke a leg, this was evidence of witchcraft. For example, if I said, Jordan, if you don't stop talking in class, you may break an arm. And if you broke an arm, I could be considered a witch. When we do a DBQ, the benefit of it is Common Core. Analyzing a situation and being able to verbalize what was happening, and also prediction. And it's also what it's doing is it's pre-writing too. They're eventually going to have to think of what caused the hysteria. Using your background essay, we have 10 minutes right now. I want you to go through on the front side and answer these questions right here. Okay, so the first one says, what was a way to punish people for not testifying in court? Raise your hand. Does anyone have the answer to that one? Yes, Caleb.
Being pressed by stones.
Okay, being pressed to death by stones. On that final activity of the worksheet, what it does is it helps with that Common Core with text-dependent questions. They're answering questions from a text. They've just sat down and read it kindergarten style, and now they're having to extrapolate out and answer those questions with complete sentences sometimes. Other times, it's just a foundation, and we'll get to those complete sentences as we move along in the processes. Who or what is to blame? Examine the documents that follow and formulate your own question. What caused the Salem witch trial hysteria of 1692? Step 3 is taking all of these documents. Some are primary sources, some are secondary sources, and they're provided for you through DBQ Project. My goal through the Common Core standards is to get kids to be able to cite specific sources, because later on they're going to use these sources to basically write a persuasive essay. Before we even start to look at the documents, at the top here, at the top of your page, right next to where you have your name, will you make 2 little buckets? Pre-bucketing is just getting them to hypothesize or anticipate what kind of categories you would take these 9 documents and kind of clump them together. Raising your hand, I want you to hypothesize or anticipate. Think about what might have caused this whole Salem witch trial. What caused all this craziness? What could be one cause of this? Justin?
Them believing in the Bible.
Okay, so the Bible.
Just rumors.
Rumors. Okay, I like that. Rumors.
A hysteria type.
Okay, stereotyping.
Weird behavior.
Just weird behavior. Okay, so can we just say childish behavior? Is that okay?
Yeah, awkward.
Awkward behavior? Okay. Childish behavior, awkward behavior. When we're done with all of the documents, we'll have concrete buckets that we'll all make sure that we can kind of agree to. As we start to look at the documents, is it a primary source or a secondary source? Where is it coming from? Important images, quotes, or data, and then possible buckets, right? What you think caused the witch trial. So everyone flip over to your first page, go through your whole process. You can work with your partner. Main idea of this document. All right, what do you think the main idea is, Jordan?
What's the characteristics of a witch so they can try to find more?
Okay, so characteristics of a witch. Before we even sit down to write, they'll have bucketed out each document into a specific category, and those buckets will then become their body paragraphs. All right, so we are on document 7. I need somebody with a strong reading voice to read this for me, please.
What are we to think of those persons who continued the accusations, the afflicted children and their associates? They soon became intoxicated by the terrible success of their imposture. Once or twice they were caught in their own snare, and nothing but the blindness in their bewildered community saved them from well-deserved punishment. It is dreadful to reflect upon the enormity of their wickedness. There can be no doubt that they were great actors.
What's going on here? What's this guy saying? He's accusing the kids of making the mischief. He's saying, what do we think of these people who commit these accusations? These afflicted children, right? That's why I put it in quotes. He's saying they became intoxicated, right? They started to love the terrible success of their acting. What's this guy accusing the girls of doing?
Like accusing like their parents because they don't like them for something of being a witch.
Yeah, he's saying the kids are making all this stuff up. They're just starting to act, right? Just like when we did our hook exercise, you guys started accusing everybody and act and, start chirping and making cat noises and dog noises. He's saying once they realized they were successful at it, once they realized people were buying into this and people were paying attention to them, you guys have seen little kids, they'll do anything for attention. This guy here, Charles Upham, is saying the whole reason this was caused was because little kids were great actors. And they got the adults to believe them. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay, quickly go through your parts right here on 7, 8, and 9. Sorry, the source, the author, the date, source, main idea, important image or quote. What caused it? What do you think it was? Bible, rumor, stereotyping, childish behavior, time of the year. Once I know that they understand all the documents, what I do is then we have what I call the official buckets, and these are writing ideas. We've got a bunch of different possible things. I want to narrow this down to just the top 3. So kind of looking back through that, kind of thinking about all of these documents, which one kept on popping up the most? Spencer?
Childish behavior.
I think we can do, can everyone agree to that? Yeah. Okay. Childish behavior. Let's write at the bottom. Yes, Isaiah?
Bible.
Yes, Bible and religion. I'm going to leave this third bucket up to you. All right? So you get to pick of the other ones. So we got Bible. That's the whole class one. We've got childish behavior. You can pick one of the other 3 that you think the most documents could also fit into. I told them 2 categories that they had to fill in, and then left the third bucket was an option for the kids to have their own opinion. I want you to start to fill up your buckets. So I want you to go back through the documents, and I want you to put, where would you put document number 1? You don't have to say it out loud, just your own mind, your own opinion. These are your opinions. You can't be wrong. You're going to start filling them up and putting the numbers in the buckets you want.
I'll put it into Bible.
You sure?
Yeah.
3, I believe, is rumors.
I like the part when you put the documents into the buckets, because then you know exactly where you want to put the information into each paragraph, and it helps you the most by far.
Look at your buckets and see which ones you have the most full. What I did is I wanted you to kind of choose as a student which cause of the Salem witch trial you believed was the root of it. If you believe religion and Bible was the main cause, childish behavior. You have 2 minutes, meet and talk about it. Go. I had the kids split up into 2 groups, and then what we did was a thrash out, a debate in order to get the kids to tell us what evidence they were going to use as part of an argument. Order in the court.
I think Salem witch trials was caused by childish behavior because all those people, the children, they think the children started it and were using childish behavior by acting like they had a demon inside of them.
Okay. Any response? Sarah.
According to document 1, if the Bible didn't even, if the Bible existed, if the Bible didn't even exist, they wouldn't even know about witches.
It was a little bit different today because I had kids who would sit in the middle who hadn't made up their minds yet, and basically kind of the goal of the exercise was while they were doing the debate, they were trying to influence those kids to come over to their side. You don't have to say anything. I just want you to stand up and walk to the side you agree with more. Nope. Ooh, the way way this whole exercise ties into Common Core is you have to cite the evidence. The evidence is the key. Without that, your argument has nothing to stand on. A good argument will have reasons and evidence to back that up. And so when a student begins to write their essay and they want to know, how do I know that I'm getting my argument across? Well, if you can cite evidence, then it's hard to refute that. And so this whole exercise was built around the Common Core of citing and using your argument, and you have to use textual evidence to back that up. So today, we're going to take all the stuff we've been doing over the last 3 days, and we're now going to take that information and start to pour it into a rough draft. What the rough draft is they all have sentence starters, and so the kids are basically going in and plugging in stuff they've already done through the previous 3 days in order to kind of make this mash of a rough draft. You guys, because you're teenagers, are experts at doing arguing, right? You've got to make sure that you have 3 parts to it. First part is give evidence. Second part is have a reason. And then explain to them, kind of like that tier thing, right? What might happen if you didn't have it. The 2 hardest parts that I find for my students are citing their evidence. They've done all the work, they know the evidence, but the proper way of doing it, almost like an English class, and then giving a good argument. And so before I even start with all this, we kind of talk about arguments that they have in their personal lives. What could be some evidence that you could give your parents why you need a cell phone? Amy. And it kind of helps them realize to win an argument, you must have good evidence, you must cite that evidence, and then kind of predict what would happen if I didn't have a cell phone, or in case of the Salem witch trials, what would happen if they weren't using religion in the Bible, or there wasn't childish behaviors. In your English class, what's another name for a grabber? What else do you call that? Sarah?
Hook.
Okay, so right now, please just write hook. And there's another word that I know some of your teachers are using, begins with an L. Yes, a lead. Okay? A lead. So what you're going to do is when I tell you, you don't have to do it right now, you got to come up with 1 to 2 sentences, right, to entice the reader to want to read your essay. You really want to draw them in and make sure that they're going to be interested to read this. Next part. Background information about Salem, Massachusetts. Where are you going to pull that information from?
Background essay.
Yes, Inderbeer.
Background essay.
Okay, background essay. What's the question we're going to answer? The whole question right now. Shelby.
What caused the Salem witch trial hysteria of 1690?
Everybody right now write that out. What caused? Today's lesson ties into the Common Core. This is where the rubber meets the road. You really have all these analytical skills. They've been doing all the analysis of documents. They've been figuring out matching. They've argued it out. And now you have to kind of take a personal step and actually show that you've learned and you know what the evidence is. And you have to tie that in to an argument, create your own thesis. And the important part is now you have to defend it. Take reason number 1, okay, and write it right here. Okay? Religion. And reason number 2, whatever your second reason is, write it down here for the second body paragraph. Childish behavior. Right now, go back to your buckets where it says evidence. Just put I want you to use 2 documents, 2 pieces of evidence for each one. Okay, so if you're going to use religion, right now, physically write out document number, and then whatever document number you're going to use, and then put them in brackets like this. Okay, so the 2 documents you're going to use. They know what the argument is, but expressing that in written form takes a little bit of extracting. And the other one too is how to properly cite a document. The DBQ method asks you to put it in brackets and then explain what the document it is. And the last part, you have to tell them why your evidence is important. This is the most important part of your whole essay. You can do all this beautiful work, but if you miss the argument, it doesn't make sense. What I really want for them to do is to feel comfortable analyzing documents. Can they come up with writing skills? Can you make a coherent thesis statement? And a lot of kids know as they're working on this that they're doing a good job. And oftentimes I hear from the other teachers and even their English teachers using components of the DBQ to write just a normal persuasive essay. And so that's kind of the aha moment for me, is when I heard English teachers knocking on my door asking me, how are you getting kids to write such good essays? And they want to know, they're curious as to the methods we're using, and the kids really truly do feel comfortable with it. They seem to own it and gravitate towards it, and I even have kids coming back from high school telling me, this works, you're right, and they find a great success in it.